Okay, today's daf is daf Chaf Beis, and we're holding on the top three lines from the top of the Amud Chaf Beis Amud Aleph Maseches Brachos. And the Gemara says, "Umi Islay le Yehuda Hir." Does Rabbi Yehuda in fact hold this concept of Hir? We had a discussion yesterday between the Tanakama and Rabbi Yehuda, a discussion about the Balkari and about whether Hirer is Kajip or dummy or not. So he come out that according to everybody that Hirer is in fact significant, that is considered like saying it. So the Gemara says, "Does Rabbi Yehuda even hold of this concept of all that Hirer works?" Well, Tanya, we learned in a Braita, Balkari shein lemayim litfol, a Balkari, one who had an emission, who saw has no water to go to the mikvah, to dip in the mikvah. That kind of Ezra that we were talking about. Kara Kriya Shema, he says Shema because Daraisa. Ve'in Mavarach lo lefanei lo la'achrei, he doesn't say the brachas before or after. Va'ichal pita, and he can eat his bread. And Mavarach la'achrei, and he says the bracha after the Birchat Hamazon, which is a Daraita. Ve'in Mavarach lefanei, but he does not say the bracha before. Av Mahar Belibo, but he'll think of them in his heart. Aval Mahar Belibo, and what's his svasa? He doesn't articulate it with his lips. Okay, Divrei Rameir. Yehuda says, Bein kachu, bein kach moitzi b'svasav, he should in fact, with regard to the Shema, in regard to the bracha of the Birchat Hamazon, as I said, after one eats, and again, even in regard to the one that's before, Mitzvah Svasav, he should enunciate with his lips. So what do you see? You see, he doesn't hold of this concept of her. Remember, Nachman Yitzchak, Asan Rabbi Yehuda Kehilchas Derech Eretz. No, Rabbi Yehuda looked at the brachas before and after Shema, and the brachas before one eats Birchat Hamazon, he considered them like Hilchas Derech Eretz. Now we know Derech Eretz is the way of the land, the proper anhagas, proper actions that a person should take in his everyday lives, and brachas are considered like sort of equal or comparable to the concept of derech eretz because they're part of our everyday life. The Tanya, we learned in a Braita, and it says, "V'hodatim levanecha levanei vanecha." Right? We had this psukim yesterday. We had the smicha of you should teach your children and your grandchildren. Because after that, it says, "Yom asher mant lefnei Hashem lekecha bechorav," the day that you stood at Chorav in Har Sinai. So we said, "Malahalan," just like over there. And Har Sinai be'ema, with awe, ubiyira, with fear, ubereses, with trembling, ubezeya, like sweating, or shaking. Afkan, also over here, when it comes to teaching your children, it has to be ube'ema, ubiyira, ubereses, ubezeya. Okay, when it comes to limud Torah, learning Torah, it has to be done with a certain kvedus harosh, right, with a certain seriousness, and one who is a balkari cannot do it. Mikan here we learn hazavim ha'mitzarayim, a person who's a zav, has a state of ziva, ha'mitzarayim, or a person who is a mitzara, right, even though they're ubayin al nidas, and one who had relations with a nida. Okay, all these people have tuma chamura of 7 days of ritual impurity, but still mutarim likras b'Torah b'nevim u'ksuvim. They could learn Torah, Nevi'im, Ksuvim, Lishnas, Mishnah, to learn the Mishnah, Gemara, Halachas, Agados. They can learn everything. Aval Balkari and Asurim, but one who's a Balkari, who becomes a Balkari through the act of sexual relations, and that's Linus or Baratzan. Either way, there's a certain amount of ikvedut, or of lack of seriousness, and therefore he's asurim b'divrei Torah until he goes and dips in the mikvah. Okay, it's Tanakama. Rav Yossi says, Shonahu b'regilos, he is allowed to study those that he's familiar with. Eventually, as the Seish Mishnah. Regilos means the psukim in the Chumash and the Tanakh that he knows very well. He doesn't have to invest any energies into or expand himself into. He can do those. Eventually, at Seish Mishnah, he shouldn't delve into the Mishnah. Rav Nassim Yosef Amar Matziyahu Mishnah, he could delve into the Mishnah in the state of Balkari. Ve'im Matzias HaGemara, the Bach over here changes to be Medrash. Okay, so he shouldn't delve into the Medrash. Rav Nassim ben Shalom Omer Af Matzias as a Gemara. Okay, he can also delve into the Gemara, which is Medrash, or Vavachli Omer Askar Shabbat, as long as he doesn't say Hashem's name in it. Okay, Rav Yochanan Sandler, Talmidish Rabbi Akiva, the Yochanan the Sandler who said in the name of Rabbi Akiva is Rabbi Akiva, Mishum Rabbi Akiva. Okay, he was a student of Rabbi Akiva, said in the name of Rabbi Akiva. Lo yichnais lemedrash kol ikar. He shouldn't go into medrash at all. He shouldn't study medrash at all. But some say he said lo yikanis lebeis hamedrash kol ikar. He shouldn't actually go into the beit hamedrash at all, into the house of study. Rabbi Yehuda Omer shonahu b'hilchas derech eretz, and this is the opinion that we brought down to show that Rabbi Yehuda says he equates learning Torah like hilchas derech eretz. Okay. Which means that Hilchas Derech Eretz, we know that he's a little more lenient about. Okay, so what comes out? Ma'aser Rabbi Yehuda. There was a story of Rabbi Yehuda Shara Keri, that he himself saw a Keri. He was walking on the side of the river, and Amr Talmid of his students told him, Rabbeinu, our teacher, please teach us a parak of Hilchas Derech Eretz, how a person should act, what is proper for a person to act. So Yorad, he went down to Taval and he dipped himself into the mikvah. And he taught them. They told him, did you not teach us that that even in the state of Balkari, one could actually study Hilchas Derech Eretz? He told them, even though I am lenient with others, I am more stringent upon myself. Which is the theme we find often, like we see in Pirkei Avot, Ethics from the Fathers. We see the statement from Beis Shammai that Shammai said that one should be, very careful, be kaveh eat the Torah, and very stringent upon himself. But in Makabel Kol Adam Sefer Param Yafos, you're supposed to smile and be accepting of other people. So a different standard when it comes to oneself versus when it comes to other people. So very, very often we're the opposite. We judge other people. We have different reasons why we justify our actions, but in truth, it really should be the opposite. Okay, 2 lines from the top of the wide lines. And the Gemara continues. Tanya Rabbi Yehuda Mesera Hayomer. Rabbi Yehuda Mesera used to say, "Ein divrei Torah mekabel tuma." Divrei Torah and the words of Torah are not mekabel tuma. They don't accept ritual impurity upon them, and therefore you can learn Torah even as a balkari, even as one who had a 7 mission. Okay, and Ma'aser B'Tal Menecha, there was a story with one person. Shahei Megamgim Lamala Rabbi Yehuda. He was megamgim. Lashon megamgim is rushing through. So he was reading, but he was he was rushing through as if he was like nervous. So Rabbi Yehuda ben Meseira understood that he was a balkari, and he told him, "Amar li bani, my son, psach pi tevarecha, open your mouth," meaning be a little bit more articulate and let your words shine. Why? You don't have to be afraid. She'ein divrei Torah mekablan tuma, because the words of Torah do not ritual impurity. Shenema, the verse says, God says, my words are like words of fire. Okay, ma eshen mekabel tuma, just like fire, as it is not mekabel tuma. After Torah, ain't mekabel tuma are not going to be mekabel tuma. Okay, so then Amar Mar, the Metzias HaMishnah, you can delve into the Mishnah. Gemara, which we said was a really reference to the Medrash, okay? And the Gemara says, this is a proof, this is a support for Veloi. To Amar Veloi said, Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Mishum Rabbeinu, the name of Rabbeinu, some say this is Rav. The halacha is Metzias HaMishnah, that one could delve into the Mishnah, but in Metzias HaGemara. Okay, and the Gemara says Ketanai. This is actually like a machlokas Tanaim that says Metzias HaMishnah, Ve'ena Metzias as HaGemara. Divrei Amir. Rehuda ben Gamliel, Omer Mishum Chanina ben Gamliel, Zeb is Aser. Okay, both of them are Aser, forbidden to do in a state of carry. V'Amrila, and some say Zeb is Mutter. So the Gemara says Mandi Amar Zeb is Aser K'Riyochan and Asandler. Okay, like Riyochan and Asandler, that you can't do ma'ayin in the Medrash. And the one who says Ma'anim Rezev is Mutter, that everything's permitted, like we just said, the Rehuda ben Meseira's shita is that the words of Torah are not mekabel tuma. Okay, Amar Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak said, Nohog Alma, the world is Noheg, acts Kahani Tlas Sabi, like these 3 elders. Okay, and what is it? Each one is its own shita, where there was a machlokas, there was an argument between the sages, and they had an opinion, a certain opinion, and we follow their opinion in all 3 cases. The reason this is coming in, as we'll see in a moment, is for this concept of whether the words of Torah are mekabel tuma or not. So the Gemara says, what was it? Kurvaloi b'reishas hagiz. Ravaloi, with regard to the halachas of reishas hagiz. Now we know reishas hagiz is first shearings. Okay, there's a machlokas. This is the Gemara's Chulin about a kohen who, a person who has sheep. We have a concept as a mitzvah's aseh, a positive commandment, that when one shears his sheep, he actually has to set aside the first shearings, a certain measurement about it. It's a big discussion amongst the sages, but the first shearings have to go to the Kohen, to the priests. Okay, so the machlokas over there, an argument between Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, how many sheep have to be shorn to amass what amount of wool that has to be going to the Kohen. So Beis Shammai says even 2 sheep brings you under responsibility for it, and base Hillel says you have to have 5 sheep. So we're gonna pass like Rav Eloi Bereshis Hagez. Okay, over there there's machlokas about whether the halachas of Bereshis Hagez, of the first shearings go to the Kohen, is only applies in Eretz Yisrael, in the land of Israel, or it's even in Chutz La'aretz. Okay, Rav Eloi was the opinion it's only in Eretz Yisrael, and we don't have to give the first shearings to the Kohen outside of Israel. So the halachas like Rav Eloi Bereshis Hagez, Rav Yeshaya B'kilayim, when it comes to kilayim, okay, which is also, again, mixtures, forbidden mixtures, we'll talk about it in a moment, and Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira b'divrei Torah, like we just mentioned, the divrei Torah not mekabel tuma. So the Gemara says, Rav Eloi b'reishis hagez d'Tanya. Rav Eloi Omer, Rav Eloi says, reishis hagez in a noik ela ba'aretz, only in Eretz Yisrael, not in Chutz La'aretz. We don't have the concept of the first shearing is going to the Kohen. And Rav Yeshai b'kilayim, the verse says, Lo yisizra karmecha kilayim. Okay, now Rabbi Yeshaya says, "La'olam ein chayiv." You don't have a biblical prohibition of mixing together forbidden mixtures when it comes to forbidden plantings. Ad sheyizra chita v'saora v'chartz mipolas yad. You actually have to have a mixture that's very particular and has to be done with one throw of the hand. And what it has to be? It has to be wheat, barley, and the grape seed. So it has to have all 3 of these seeds that are thrown and planted at the exact same moment, and from that comes a sprout that's forbidden. Okay, it's forbidden to act like God and to do this. So he says that it's not just wheat and barley, or wheat and grape, or vine, or any other kinds of plantings, but it actually has to be this particular planting. Okay, so then Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira b'divrei Torah, the tiny Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, ein divrei Torah mekabelin tuma. The words of Torah are not mekabel tuma. Ki asa Zeiri Amar. When Zeiri came, he said, "Batlua letfilusa." They annulled the concept of tefillah. Now we know that Ezra, when he was masaking the tefillah to maintain a certain level of sanctity amongst the Jewish people, it was that one had to go to the mikvah upon seeing a riyah of keri. Okay, of seminal emission. So this being said, now that Yehuda ben Beseira said that it's not mekabel tuma, so essentially he's annulled the entire decree of having to go to the mikvah, because now if Talmidei Chachamim, Torah scholars, could learn Torah without going to the mikvah, then there's no need to go to the mikvah. So V'amrila, some said they had a quote that the quote was actually batlu nitilusa, that they annul the natila, which means the natila tadayim, washing of hands. So man yomer batula tvilasa, that his statement was that they annul the tefillah. That's Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. That makes sense to say it's like Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira. And Kaman Yomer Batlu Nitilusa, that they were actually, essentially, the quote was that they were annulled the obligation to wash one's hands from Natilas Yadayim. That's Kihadar of Chizda, Layad Amad Mahadar Amaya Be'idin Salusa. Like Rav Chizda, who cursed out the guy who went after water at the time of davening. Now, it was the time of Tefillah, time of Kriyashma, and you're supposed to wash your hands. So if the guy doesn't see water, he starts walking around, he's going to miss the proper times. And instead, you should only do with medium and nakin, that it's something that cleans, like pebbles, or like we said earlier, wood chips, but it doesn't necessarily have to be with water. Okay? Then the Gemara continues. 2 dots. Tana Rabbanan. We learned Balkari Shinasnu Alav Tisha Kavin Mayim Tahar. Okay? The new concept, and we'll get into greater length in this in a moment. But a Balkari, someone who saw this emission, Shinasnu Alav Tisha Kavin, who had 9 kavin. Okay, which is approximately, our measurements, 13 liters of water put on him. So he didn't actually immerse in the mikvah, but he sort of took a shower. Okay, they poured a bucket like the Gatorade, the 9 kavin of water on his head. He's also considered ritually pure. Nachum ish gamzu. Now Nachum ish gamzu heard this halacha, and lachsha Rabbi Akiva. He whispered it to Rabbi Akiva. Sort of like, don't tell anybody, but this is the halacha. Rabbi Akiva lachasha leben Azai. Rabbi Akiva whispered it to Ben Azai. Okay, just to note, Nachum Ish Gamzu was called Nachum the Ish Gamzu. Gamzu, which is a reference to his all the stories in Titus. He was a man who had incredible miracles occur for him. He was called Gamzu Latova because everything he said happened for the best, and therefore he was known as Nachum Ish Gamzu. Okay, the man who was constantly saying, this too is for the best. So he told to Rabbi Kiva, and Rabbi Kiva lachshal Rabbi Ben Azai, whispered it to Ben Azai, as if don't spread it around. Ben Azai yotza v'shana l'talmida peshuk. He went out and taught it publicly in the market. Now put it on a mass email. So the Gemara says, Pligi Batre Amarai b'Marava. There's an argument between the 2 sages in Eretz Yisrael, Rabbi Yossi bar Rav and Rabbi Yossi bar Zvida. Okay, they had an argument about this concept. What is it? What is the reason? Chad Tani once said Shana, that he went and taught it to people out in his Talmud Meshuk. V'chad Tani Lachsha that he whispered it. So the Gemara says, Man Tani Shana that he taught it Mishum Bittul Torah, because there was a Bittul Torah. There was now less Torah learning occurring because people, a Talmud Chacham, the Torah scholars, or the Torah Rabbanan, the young Talmud Chacham who were in Beis Medrash and learning, and now they saw a seminal mission, even from regular relations with their wife, they would become tamei and not be able to learn Torah. So this was until they went to the mikvah. So if they got to the yeshiva late, they would miss precious learning time. So this essentially removed that need, because now all they had to do is jump in the shower or come up with 9 kavin of water and pour it over themselves. They didn't have to find a mikvah of 40 sa, which is more difficult to find. So therefore, he taught it publicly in order that there should be less bittul Torah. Okay, umisham bittul perivia, and because of the bittul perivia, that there are less. Again, people because of this, Talmidei Chachamim who took this learning seriously were having less relations, because they didn't want to engage in relations where they would become tamei and not be able to learn. So there was less procreating going around. Uman did Tani Lachsha that he in fact whispered it. The reason they whispered it, because they were very sensitive to the needs of the Talmud Chacham and also the needs for his Torah study, and they didn't want them to be their wives, like the language is like chickens, which essentially means it shouldn't be just a free-for-all in regards to their sexual lives, and they should be a little bit more careful than the rest of the population, and they should have more of a focus on their Torah study. Okay, so the Gemara continues. Amar Rav Yanai says, Shamati Shemakilimba. I heard that there are people who are more makel. Okay, that they just go after the Tisha Kavin, and they just after having relations or after seeing an emission, they just pour the 9 kav all over their heads. V'shamati shemachmir, but I heard there are other people who are more machmir, and they actually go after a mikvah. V'kol machmir ba'alatzmai marichin layam v'shnosav, will live a long life. Okay, so a nice thing to do. Amar Rishuv Levi says, Ma tivan shal tov li shachar. What's the nature? What's the good that comes out of those who go to the mikvah in the morning? Okay, after a night of being with their wives, in the morning they would go to the mikvah. So ma tivan. What's good about it? What do you mean? Ha ihu de Amar. He's the one whose opinion we had earlier. Rishuv Levi said, Bal carries asabit Torah, so they have to go to the mikvah in order that they can be able to continue studying. Now this is what he meant to say. Mativan ba'arbayim sa. What's the reason that they go after a mikvah of rainwater, that natural water that was 40 sa? Efshar b'tisha kavin. 9 kavin is sufficient. Mativan b'tefillah. Why do those go after the tefillah to do the dipping in the mikvah? Efshar b'nesina. We know that it's sufficient for them just to place the 9 kavin on themselves. So Rav Chanina said, Geder gadol gadru ba. Why? Because it was very efficient to have this need, and it was acted as a deterrent. Tanya, we learned in a brisa, the story with one person, a woman was trying to seduce a certain woman for immoral sexual act, and Amrullah, she told him, Reika, you empty one. Do you have 40 sa? You have a mikvah in your house? You're going to have to go find a mikvah. So it's not worth it. So miyad pirish. Immediately he left her, and he didn't perform the avera. Okay, so you see that it actually has the getter gadol gadru ba. The Gemara continues. Amar lahu Rav Huna l'Rabbanan. Rav Huna tells the Rabbanan, Rabbi Yisai, mipnei ma atem mizalzim b'tefillah zu. How come you're taking it lightly? How come you don't have a seriousness about this tefillah? Imisham tzina, because the mikvahs are very cold. They have heated mikvahs. It's very cold, so you don't need that. Efshar b'marchotas, you could just go to the bathhouse. Hamalei Rav Chizra told him, "Chayish tefillah b'chamin." Can you just go to a warm bath of water and dip yourself in it? Hamalei Ravada Barava. Hamalei, he told him, Ravada Barava kavasech. Ravada Barava holds like you, and that I disagree. I say that you can actually just for this particular kind of tefillah, you can go to a bathhouse even. Okay. Now, Rav Zera was sitting in a puddle of water, meaning a bath. He was sitting in a physical bath inside of the bathhouse. And Amalei Shmi, he told his servant, Zil v'aisili tisha kavin, bring 9 kavin because I was Balkari, v'shadi levei, and pour it over my head. So Amalei Rav Chia Bar Abba was there, and he told him, Why do you have to do this? You're sitting in 9 kavan at least, right? So Amalei told him no, Arba'im Sa. It takes on the characteristics like Arba'im Sa. Tefillah, just like we know that the 40 Sa, which we say that you need for tefillah, has to be dipping. For Leibnicisina, it doesn't work when you put it over your head. You have to go into it. After Shekavim Medicina, the 9 kavim that we said, it has to occur with being put on you. Doesn't work with V'loi Tefillah. Doesn't work with being immersing it. So the fact that I'm sitting in it does not suffice. Okay, 3 lines from the bottom. Rav Nachman Tikin Chitzva Chatzva Bas Tisha Kavin. Rav Nachman established for his yeshiva, outside the yeshiva, a barrel that held this 9 kavin, this approximate 13 liters, and the students used to use it to pour over themselves after they would have emissions. So Kiyasar of Dimi Amar. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Huda, Glustra Amru. Rabbi Dimi, when he came from Eretz Yisrael, he told them. Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Huda, Glustra, they said, Loi Shanu, this that we said that the 9 kavin works, Ela l'chayla la'ansai. That's only for a sick person, one who is not well, who's an onus, meaning he saw an emission in the middle of the night, and he had some sort of, by mistake, emission. Someone who is not well or sick, and Rashi points out here, which is very critical to understand this Gemara, the nature of a Talmidei Chachamim, of Torah scholars, is that they're considered sick, they're considered frail, they don't have enough exercise, they don't get enough light, so they're considered frail. Okay, so he said that this that we had said the 9 kavin works for carry. That's only for cholel la'onso, a person who's not well, who saw an emission by mistake. It occurred. One who is margil, ragil, which means regular, which means from an act. He saw an emission, but it was because of on purpose. Okay, because of relations he had. Arba'im Sa. It's not going to suffice. So what did Amar of Yosef? It for Chatz Rav Nachman. The barrel of Rav Nachman has been broken. Okay, it doesn't mean literally broken, but it means allegorically that there's no need for it anymore, because most of the time when the young Torah scholars come to in the morning and they use this Tisha Kavin kli, it's because they had regular relations, and you're saying now that that's not going to suffice, and they actually have to go after a mikvah. Okay, Kiyasa Ravin, when Rava came, Amar Busha, Avovda, there's a story Bekila Dervoshaya in the hallway over there, and also Vishol Ravasi, they asked Ravasi. Okay, Amar Lahu Loishanu El L'chayla Hamargil. This that we had said that the 9 kavin works, it's only L'chayla Hamargil. He changes it. Okay, that's only for a person who is a weak person, who's having regular relations. So, Pater mikulam. He doesn't pater mikulam means he's totally exempt, and one who is not feeling well, and a chola, a weak person who had a emission or a sightings of emission by mistake, he doesn't need anything at all. He doesn't even need the Tisha Kavin. So Rav Yosef, it's David Chassid Rav Nachman. Now Rav Nachman's barrel has miraculously been repaired and patched back together all the pieces, because now there's a purpose for it, according to the opinion of Ravin. Okay, so we have these 2 different shittas. We have Rav Dimi and Ravin. Now the Gemara says, Mechti, let us see. Kulo Amarai v'Tanai, but Ezra Kamivalgi. We know that Ezra is the one who set up this concept of the tefillah, or Nesina, we'll see, for a person who sees carry. So if they're all arguing in Ezra, then Ezra heichatikon. Why don't we just figure out what did Ezra misakin? So now Tosas points out that we don't ask this all over the place. But let's just see what they did, because the reason why it's particularly strange over here that we don't know, says the Gemara, is because this is a day-to-day kind of occurrence. This is like Shema. We say it every day. Meaning every day there were people from the time of Ezra until the time of Amoraim who in fact had to be tovel or not tovel for sightings of carry. So it doesn't make sense. The Gemara is saying, what was really that takana? Why don't we know what's going on over here? So the Gemara says like this: Amar Abaya. Okay, Abaya gives a first answer. Ezra tikin libari hamargil memsa. Okay, Ezra, when he instituted the whole concept of going to the mikvah after a sighting, he originally instituted for a bari hamargil, one who is healthy, okay, who has relations, that he now has to go to a mikvah 40 sa. And he also instituted labari la'anso teskavin, one who is completely healthy, and he just saw a sighting one night by mistake. Teskavin works for him. Okay, that was the original institution according to Abaye. V'asamarai, and now the later rabbis came, upligi b'cholet, and they have an argument about a cholet, or i.e., in our case, a Talmud Chacham, a young Talmud Chacham. Okay, and they want to know what would Ezra hold? What would Ezra say? Mar Savar, one says chola hamargil kabari hamargil. There's no difference between a chola and a bari, one who's sick and one who's healthy. Okay. Therefore, when it comes to being margil, regular relations that a man has, a chola or a bari is going to be the same, and both are going to need 40 sa. The chola la'anso, but a chola la'anso is kabari la'anso. But a person who's chola, and has a mistake, has a sightings, he is like a bari la'anso. I mean, there's no differentiation between a person who's having regular relations to a person who, by mistake, saw a sightings. Okay? And therefore, the chola amargil and the bari amargil are both going to need 40 sa. Okay? And the chola la'anso and the bari is kabari la'anso, and they're both going to have tesha kavin. Okay? Umar Savar, and the second opinion was that Chola Hamargil, a sick person or Talmud Chacham who is having regular relations, becomes Kibari Lanso. Okay? He takes a step down, and he becomes like a healthy person who saw by mistake. Okay? And therefore, a Chola Hamargil is Kibari Lanso. And therefore Teshkavin. The Chola Lanso, and a person who is not well, who saw a sign by mistake, is Patrimikul. Okay, so that's the root of the machlokas according to Abaye. But Abaye is basing his whole thing on Ezra, in fact, being masakin both the concept of 40 sa, if tefillah, and the concept of nesina, of placing of 9 kavod. Okay, Amar Rava says, wait a second. Now he granted the Tikkun Ezra tefillah. You're right. Ezra was masakin. He did institute the concept of tefillah. But nesina mi taken. Do we ever find a statement that in reference to Ezra being masakin, the concept of nesina of Tesha Kavin? V'amar Mar, we have a quote that says, Ezra Tikkun Tefillah Balakarian, that Ezra instituted the concept of Tefillah. But we don't see anything about the concept of Nesina. So Rava throws out Abaye's answer, and Rava has a totally different alternative. Elamar Rava, Ezra Tikkun Tefillah Lebari Hamargel Memsa. Okay, all Ezra instituted was for a normal, healthy person who had normal relations, and now is a Balkari, that he has to go to the mikvah in 40 sa. Okay, v'asar rabbanan, and later rabbis came. V'skinu, and they made a takana lebari laonso. Okay, now a person who by mistake saw is not the same thing the rabbanan said, and they said that he only needs teisha kavod. Okay, and now later on, v'asar amarai, the later rabbis came v'kam v'valgi b'chola, and they have an argument about a sick person. Mar savar chola hamargil kabari hamargil. Okay, Evachol Hamalonsa Kabari Lonso. Omar, some of the other opinion is Labari Amargil Memsa, Vachol Hamargil Kabari Lonso Teskavin. Okay, Aval Lachol Lonso Patriklum. Okay, and therefore we have now a machlokas Abaye and Rava, which is just an understanding in the history of how we came to this machlokas of Rav Dimi. I'm sorry, of Rav Dimi and Ravin. Okay, so the Gemara continues about is okay. Now there's a big discussion in the early commentators how to read this. We're just going to read it at face value, but it's definitely not so simple. Now halacha is, according to Rava, bari hamargel, one who is a healthy person who is having regular relations, vichol hamargel, and one who is sick, okay, not well, and is also having regular relations. Arba'im sa, they both need 40 sa, a mikvah. Ubari la'onso, tishakavin, okay, and a person who is healthy and has an accident, needs tishakavin. When it comes to a sick person or a Talmud Chacham who by mistake had a sighting, he's exempt completely. Okay. Now the Gemara continues. Tana Rabbanan. We learned Balkari Shnas Olav Teshakavin Mayim Tar. A Balkari who puts on himself 9 kavin of water, he's tar. Bemed Varmamurim. The Brisa continues. When is that said? That's only la'atzmai. That's only for oneself. Okay? When one wants to learn himself Torah. Aval when it comes to teaching others, that's not going to suffice 9 kavin. But Arba'im sa, he's in fact going to need 40. I'm sorry, Arba'im sa is going to need 40 sa. Okay? Now the Gemara continues. The Brisa says, Rabbi Yehuda Omer Memsa. he's going to need memsa mikol makom. 40 saw in any place. I mean, the Gemara is going to explain that we don't really know what this means, but we're going to get onto it in just a moment. Okay? And the end of the Brisa says, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua Levi, Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yosef Rechanina. We have these 4 different stages. Chad mihai zuga, v'chad mihai zuga. Okay, so we have Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Yeshua Levi. They're one pair. We have Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yosef Rechanina. That's the second pair. So we had one from one pair and one from the other pair. Aresha. Okay, they have an argument about the early part of this brisa. And Chad Omar, one says, Had Amrit. Chad Omar, one says, this that we said that when is it that we said that it's only for oneself that the Tisha B'Av is going to work? One's teaching other people Torah. Mem Sayin is 40 saw. Okay, that's only for a chole hamargil, for one who is a not well person. So when it comes to a person who is not well, who is by mistake had a sighting, Tisha Kavin, he's only going to need 9 kavin. Okay? V'chan Amar, one says, the other opinion is said, Kol la'acherim, the lowest level of a not well person who had a by mistake sighting, when it comes to teaching other people, ad ikamem sa, he's going to need 40 sa, not suffice the 9 kavin. Okay? V'chad mihai zuga, and one from the same pair that we just had. Okay, one from each pair have an argument of aseifa on the end of this memra. What's the seifa? Rabbi Yehuda said that when you need 40 sa in any place, all the time, lo shanu was not said ela b'karka, that the 40 sa is in the karka. As long as it's in the karka, it could be anywhere. Aval b'kelim, if it's in a kli, if it's in a gathering of water that's not in the ground, lo, it's not going to work. V'chan Amar afilu b'kelim nami, even Rabbi Yehuda's chiddush is when it comes to the tefillah needed for Balkari, even it's going to work even if it's not ma'im shu'avin, as we're going to see in a moment. Okay, it's not rainwater. The V'chanim b'kelim nami. So the Gemara says bishlam l'manim rafilu b'kelim, that it can even be done, this dipping in a mikvah, which is not a proper mikvah. Proper mikvah can't be in a keli, it can't be gathered water, it has to be a constant flow. Higher to Rehuda, Omer mem sa mikol makom. That's the chiddush of the words mikol makom, in any place, to include that. That if dafka has to be in the ground, b'kelim lo, mikol makom lasuyimai. What's the chiddush of mikol makom? Mikol makom seems very general, everywhere. Okay, so the Gemara says la'asuye mayim shuavin, that it has to be in the karka, but it could even be mayim shuavin. It doesn't have to be rainwater. It could be water that was gathered from other places. Okay, Rapapa Ravahuna Bri Rishua Verava Bar Shmuel Krichu Rifta Bahadi Adadi. They had a meal together and they broke bread together and were eating. And when they completed eating, they wanted to do zimun. So Amalei Rapapa said to them, Havuli lididi livroch. Give me to do the zimun to bench. Dinifol ilavoi. It fell on me 9 kavin, meaning I saw a riyah of Kerry, and I had 9 kavin come on me, so I'm pure. Rava bar Shmuel Tanina. We learn from Amur Latzma. That's only for your own responsibilities. But if you want to be yotzias, avalacher memsa. You actually have to have 40 sa. Give me to bless. Fell on me 40 sa, because I went to a mikvah. Okay? So Rav Huna said, give me to bless, to let you I don't have either. Meaning, I actually am completely pure. And Rav Chama, Tavu Mamaliyam, to Pischan, Er Pesach, Lahotzi Rabbi Nechavas, used to lead the Seder, so he would go to the mikvah. But less Hilchas Kavasei, because like we said, the halacha is that one, in fact, does aim to return Mekabel and Tumah. That's how Rashi learns. Or alternatively, that it's enough just to have Nesina, and you don't have to go to the mikvah. So we'll take it from here from the Mishnah, a new Mishnah tomorrow.